of the group our discussion. Unfortunately, the limited duration, we have to end your discussion. Okay, however, the next session is not less interesting. We would like to ask permission for the operator to start the recording because in a moment we will start the fifth session of this event.
Yes, I'm ready whenever you are. So yeah.
Okay, now we are moving forward to listen the lecture session by Dr. Winny Routray from the Department of Food Processing Engineering, NIT Rourkela, India. This session will talk about food engineering and post-harvest processing of spice. And also, this session will be led by our moderator, Mr. Bayu Graha, Bachelor of Agricultural Technology, Master of Science, Philosophy, Doctor, a lecturer from the Department of Agricultural and Biosystem Engineering.
Okay, for operator, can you show our moderators, if you please?
Uh, okay. So do
Okay,
you want, let me know whenever you want me to share my screen. So
okay,
yeah.
wait a minute here, Mrs. Winnie. Uh, before before entering the class, I wanna introduce Mrs. Ariane Mutia Zahra. Okay, Mrs. Ariane Mutia Zahra received her bachelor at STP Food Science and Technology Brawijaya University, Indonesia. Uh, and Master in Post-Harvest Technology IPB University Indonesia and doctoral from Post-Harvest Technology KMUTT Thailand. And uh, Mrs. Arianis Mutia also have professional skill or expertise, controlled environment agriculture, integrated farming, plant production science, non-destructive analysis, biochemical analysis, modeling, and predicting evaluation. And Mrs. Mutia had major achievements such as Petra Prachom Cloud Doctoral Scholarship KMUTT 2023 until 2025, a Grant Community Empowerment Program based on agricultural mechanization and integrated management of straw residue, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific UNESGAP 2022, Tokyo Uni of Agriculture and Technology Japan non-degree in short-term exchange program STAP 2019 under 2020, UNIF of Natural Resources and Life Science BOKO Vienna, Austria Short Exchange Program under Asia United 2022 Grant of Finance American and more. So for Mrs. Arianis Mutia, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Gebiar and Mr. Ranga. So, Dr. Winnie, so I would like to introduce you first, and then after that, you can start your presentation. Okay?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. So before I begin the session, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants who are joining synchronously or asynchronously in many different countries. So welcome to the fifth sessions on the second day of the fifth Smart Agro-Industry Summer course. So in these sessions, I hope all of you are excited because we will exchange ideas on the food engineering and post-harvest processing of spices. And I'm happy to inform you that we already know a well-established expert is present among us, and I'm excited to hear her presentation. But before we start our sessions, maybe I want to introduce you to our great speaker. Could you please share the CV, moderator? Okay, thank you. So, good morning, Assistant Professor Dr. Winny Rourkela. So I'm sorry if I'm mistaken in pronouncing your name and title. So Prof. Winny is an Assistant Professor in the Department of Food Process Engineering at the National Institute of Technology, Rourkela, India since February 2020. And she graduated from Bioresource Engineering, McGill University, Canada, with Graduate Excellence Fellowship and received the Best Graduate Thesis Award for the Best PhD thesis awarded by the Canadian Society for Bioengineering. Wow. So she also completed the postgraduate program in data science from Purdue University, USA in 2020. And her primary research interests include many different aspects of food and post-harvest engineering. So we can see that byproduct utilizations and waste valorization through bioprocessing with the general themes of novel frontiers of bioengineering, maybe biofuels and biomaterials, and also she is also working on applying data science, statistical techniques, artificial intelligence, and machine learning in related food, agriculture, and product development. Last but not least, we can see that she is very productive and consistent researcher with many publications as a senior author with approximately more than 50 scientific articles and chapters by 21 Scopus H Index. So for all the participants, please feel free to write down your in the Q&A box section for all interested in those topics and the sessions. So I'm very happy to welcome you to join the discussion session by raising your hand and turning on your microphone during the Q&A sessions. So Prof. Winnie, as a moderator, I will be monitoring the time. So maybe you have 60 minutes to present, and I will voluntarily remind you 5 minutes before the presentation is time's up. So after that, we will have 30 minutes of discussion time. Are you ready, Prof. Winnie?
Okay, so the presentation will be for 1.5 hours, right?
Maybe around 60 minutes to presentations, 30 minutes for
Okay.
Q&A. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sure. So if you're ready, I will turn the session over to Prof. Winnie. So please welcome
Yes,
Assistant
yes.
Professor Dr. Winnie Routray. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me try to share my screen. And okay, I think somebody has shared, so probably I can't, or something is like that.
Sure.
Can you please check? And one more problem is that I'm not able to start my video, so
Okay.
I just don't know why it is happening, but yeah.
Okay. Is the operator can help to share the Prof. Winnie's presentation?
I can share my own screen
Okay.
if that is okay as well.
Okay, you can share.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Now I can see your screen now.
Okay, something is happening. When I'm sharing my screen, my mic is going on mute. So, which is kind of strange. Let me try once more.
Sure.
So, yeah. Can you guys hear me now? I think so, right? My screen is visible?
Yes, I can see your
Okay,
screen
okay,
and
okay.
hear your voice.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much for confirming. So, thank you for such a nice introduction, and thank you for the warm welcome as well. I'm honored and privileged to be sharing this platform with you all, guys. And just out of curiosity, like how many countries are we covering? Or predominantly, there are few countries which I will be delivering my lecture to.
We have 15 many different countries.
Okay, 15 different countries. Okay. So, why I asked this because my topic is on spices.
Yeah.
So, mainly spices, probably many of you know that Asia is quite predominant in it, right? So, a lot of the data or information which I will be presenting, that will be from India, as a matter of fact, because India as well as some like Asian countries, because literally we are quite like we are the biggest producer of spices, as I will discuss through the presentation as well. And I have compiled from the start. I would like to say that I have compiled actually information regarding multiple spices, but as the time is constraining, this resource can be shared with the students. However, I will be discussing with about the processing methods, so I will skip some of the part which can be referred by students later on. Okay, and you can definitely get back to me for any question, answer, or anything.
Okay,
So,
Winnie, I'm sorry. Could you please share the
okay, yes.
slideshow? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, yeah.
Great.
So now, first of all, we will look into the classification and composition of spices. We would like to understand why and how these are classified, what is demand, and the production status throughout the world, the export potential, because which are the different forms in which the spices are sold throughout the world, and then case studies of some of the processing techniques for few spices, so through which we'll be discussing about one or two spices if the time permits, and application and benefits of spices, and some of the advanced processing techniques which we are using in the spice industries. So mainly, spices are categorized or described as plant products which are used as food adjuncts, which add aroma and flavor. Okay, and for that, like what are the major components which are extracted from that, right? Essential oils, and so that's like the basic component for which it has whatever kind of properties it have. Mainly, you might be also knowing the fact that spices have their own medicinal value also, and probably the during the time of COVID it made us very much aware that like people were trying to prevent different kind of diseases, home remedies were there, and this and that. So in that case, spices have helped quite a lot, right? I mean, we can honestly vouch for that, because as people stayed home, and they have replenished their health fully, even after the dosage of medicines and everything, through spices, means one form or other. We will see into that as well. So mainly in case of spices, they don't have any nutritive value. That's like a major characteristic property. They are mainly the food adjuncts which add aroma and flavor. Okay, so that is their property. Nutritive value, when we are saying, like, it doesn't, it's not, it can have carbohydrate, protein, or other components, but they are not basically consumed with the purpose of having those protein or carbohydrate, because we have other sources from which we are acquiring those, right? And you would realize there are different forms of spices. We are much aware that whole form of spices are there, as well as ground form of spices are there. And if anyone has ever used masala, which is basically an Indian version of a mixed spice, then in that case we definitely have everything ground, right? So that's like the basic property of that masala. Now, application of these spices increases the shelf life, improves the texture. In many cases, the gravy's texture is improved, and color or flavor, or both. That can also happen. Increase the shelf life means you can see this is mainly in case of pickles. And we have to realize there are different forms of pickles. For example, the Indian pickles, we add a lot of spices in that, and the pickles which are Western, they are mainly subjected to the brine water. There are some herbs in that as well. So, As a matter of fact, anyone who has consumed pickle, they will understand that it is supposed to be kept for a longer period of time, right? So that's why it like spices play a major role in increasing the shelf life. Now, the major spices which are grown in Asia, 13, and you can say that we have quite a high production of it, which is is projected to further increase to 3.2 million metric tons by 2027. Okay, so that's like a prediction there. And major spices here, okay, here there is a contradiction between the numbers. I will categorize a major minor spices in the later slides. But India as such, we as a country have 63 spices which are well known, and there probably are some spices which are very localized, so that is there as well. Now, in terms of this is in terms of production, variety, and all. But this data here in this slide, this shows that which are the major exporters and which are the major importers. Okay, among exporters, India is still on highest, then Vietnam, then Indonesia. Sorry, not China, then Indonesia, then Madagascar. Here you can see that majorly our climate, Asian climate, is conducive for spice production. So that is the reason why we are producing so much, right? We are biggest exporters as well. And this is like a cumulative export. It's not specific to any particular spice. Now, in terms of import, USA is the largest importer according to 2017 data, followed by Germany and Vietnam. Okay, and like product which is most popular, which is being bought by US, is the ground pepper. So it's the form of pepper which is not whole, right? And other countries such as Germany and France, they largely import vanilla, followed by pepper. Okay, so here again, spices, you would realize it's not limited to any salted food. It is also a part of sweeter food, means delicacies and all the desserts which we eat. Vanilla is a very important spice in that, right? So likewise, we have certain other spices which are mainly for sweeter stuffs. Okay, so that being said, I'm going a bit faster because information is there in the slide. If you want to go back and look into that, that's yours. It's not a problem. So now, spice wise, if we see which are the largest producers, if like first producer and second producer, some of the major spices which I have jotted down here, and probably some of them are not major spice, but they are quite significantly present in the market: cardamom, ginger, turmeric, chili pepper, cumin, vanilla, nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, saffron, pepper. So these are some of the very common names, right? Out of this, you will realize vanilla, nutmeg, cinnamon, and cloves, these are mainly produced in Indonesia. Indonesia is the largest producer. Then, in terms of ginger, turmeric, chili pepper, and cumin, India is the largest producer. Okay, and the other portions are mainly predominantly Asian as well. Now, classification of spices, if based on plant parts, then it can be spices can be leaves, they can be flowers, like in case of vanilla, it's a part of the flower. Then it can be bark, cinnamon, rhizomes also, asafoetida. Then it can be fruits or seeds. Seeds is probably the most common one, fruits also, right? And mainly, you will see that they are classified based on family and species. Why I'm mentioning this? This is a very botanical term, you can say. Why I'm saying, because from one, it happens that many spices, they belong to one family. Like that is like a family which consists of the species of plants which are predominantly spices. Okay, so if it is ever discovered, you will not be surprised if you find a similar species. Okay, and why it is important in terms of processing? Because suppose Like it's for example, two different species are there, but they are related. So if we have to figure out what is the nutrition, if we are cultivating a new spice, then we have to figure out how to cultivate it, what are the nutrients which are supposed to be there, and all these things. So that becomes easier if we know a similar like species of the same family, because probably their consumption of different nutrients, the plant's consumption of different nutrients to produce the highest amount of spices or any other product will be known or can be discovered easily. Okay. Now, many of the spices we will realize that they can be annual. For example, coriander and all, they are planted and then they are harvested. Right. Biennials for 2 years, for example, perennials also, like year after year, the ones which grow on the trees. Right. Morphology of aerial parts, like it depends from which we are collecting, right? Herbs with the aerial stem or pseudostem, climbers, trees, shrubs. So there is quite a variety from which spices are obtained. Now, in terms of popularity, or you can say there are, it is the spices are categorized as major spices and minor spices. Some of the ones which are used quite frequently: cardamom, black pepper, ginger, turmeric. These are very commonly used. Now, minor spices, which are mainly seed spices, we will realize they are coriander, fennel, cumin, fenugreek, dill, aniseed, caraway, celery. Okay. And these are certain classifications which are based on, you have to see the context as well. For example, I'm describing it in this way. If you move on to somewhere else, probably the differentiation will be different. But you would realize the ones which are major spices, they are actually quite a lot used, right, as compared to other spices. Now, tree spices are also there, and clove, nutmeg, cinnamon, allspice, cassia, tamarind, bay leaf, curry leaf, etc. These are the examples of tree spices. I will show you in picture also how they are. Herbal spices: rosemary, thyme, horseradish, parsley. And one more thing is that many food, you have to understand that it's a part of culture in any place. So if you see a name which pops up as a spice, doesn't have to be like universally accepted as spice. It might be the case that it is used in a certain area as a spice. Okay. So few common names are there which are universally used as spices, but other than that, you will see some common uh, how can you say, rare names which are very limited in terms of area of use. Okay, so other spices are also there which are very popular. For example, vanilla, saffron, asafoetida, garlic also. Garlic, you can say that is quite commonly used, but then again, ginger and garlic, these two are also categorized as vegetables, isn't it? So that's why I said depends on usage or context. Now, let's discuss about black pepper. Why I chose this one? Because this is known as king of spices. Okay, so that's why I said, okay, let me describe at least about one spice which is so widely used, doesn't matter in which part of the world you are. So, this is how it looks like. The fruit looks like this, okay, and mainly it's a vine. So, this is like a picture taken when it is like it's pretty early, like the person might have started the cultivation and then it grows as dense as this picture. And this is the dried form of spice which is still on the stem or the vine, but in the dried form. And this is your means fruit from which this is being derived. This is the form in which we have mostly seen the pepper, and this is the pepper powder, right? So these are the forms. Now, scientific name of black pepper is Piper nigrum. I always emphasize on the scientific names, especially in terms of spices, as I told you. Like similar spices, they belong to same families, right? So we can know from the name which family, similar species or not. Then it belongs to the family Peperaceae, and popular variety which we are exporting and consuming as well in India, Karimunda. Okay. As I said, it is known as king of spices, and in India, it is indigenous to tropical forests of Western Ghats of South India. Okay, you would realize geographically, I can say, like apart from nutritious soil properties, you also need a lot of rainfall, you need temperature control and everything. Means spices, generally most of those spices, they don't grow in portions where it is very dry, but they are very much popular in the areas where you have enough moisture, it is cooler, it is hilly. Means there are a couple of spices like that you would see that, like, quite widely they are growing in those kind of regions. Rarely you will find that there are certain exceptions which are grown in other areas, but this is the predominant environmental condition. And probably southern India has a similar condition to Indonesia, because of which Indonesia is also producing so many spices, right? So that's there. Now, these are some of the states: Kerala and Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. These are all part of southern India, and they produce a major portion of it. 92% of the production is in Kerala and Karnataka. The rest is in other parts. Now, other countries where black pepper is also produced: Brazil, Indonesia, Malaysia. Now, um, you have to realize that whenever, like, this one is a perennial crop, we can say. So many of the actually herbs are, or spices are, perennial plants. So they are planted after in 1 year, and you have to wait until you can start harvesting. And one more thing I would like to say: it doesn't matter whichever region you are, or whatever spice it is. It's like there is a starting point when, there's a production on the plant, and spices are being harvested and everything. Because see here, like for example, it is saying you can start after 3 or 4 years, but that doesn't mean that batch of cultivated crop will be producing highest amount as soon as you start harvesting. No, the tree or the plant that actually acquires a peak point when it produces the highest, and then it starts decreasing. As the plant or the tree gets older, so the production starts decreasing again. So there is a time slot in which you can do um, profitable harvest. Okay, so that we have to see in all the spices. Like if somebody is planning to have a farm, or if you're advising somebody and somebody asks you when can we expect to harvest, right? So you have to give them a timeline. Okay, after 3 to 4 years, or 6 months, or 1 year, or probably 1.5 years, so the farmer can plan accordingly, right? Because why this information is important, because sometimes depends, like a lot of economical factor is associated with any kind of plantation, whether it is this spice or any other spice. So then what happens is, like, you have to be practical monetarily, right? You have to think about, okay, this much I'm spending, whether within next 5 years farmer will be thinking that way, right? They want to make it's a business for them. It's not like they are just growing it for the sake of growing it, right? They're cultivating it so that they can have means profit, right? So in that case, what happens is, you have to advise them accordingly. Like, okay, probably 3 years to 4 years you can start harvesting. You might have to stop harvesting after 15 years. Okay, so that's the timeline they have. They will start planning, okay, probably I can buy another patch of land and start planting next phase of harvest, right? In the middle of it. Or when this harvest is ending, for example, if you are giving a timeline of 15 years, then the last 5 years when it will be there, then they will start planting the new batch of the crop, so that they can harvest in next 3 to 4 or 5 years, right? Because it's a continuing business. Okay. Now the stages here of the plant are like there is flowering, there is ripening, and then you harvest, cure, clean, grade. Okay, so that's like a normal one. Okay, so generally what happens after harvesting or you are curing. Okay, now I want to point out the term curing. In terms of spices, what happens? Curing can span from washing or pre-treatment to drying with any kind of special drying technique or anything. Okay, anything and everything can be there. Now, so being said that, what happens is that being said that what happens in certain cases, for example, some spices need browning, some spices need fermentation. Okay, so that is known as the curing stage. Some need only drying. So and then they are kept under atmospheric condition to normalize. So that phase is known as curing. So the curing, the way I'm describing here, you cannot think that this is universal because the process of curing actually varies from spice to spice, product to product. Okay, what is the specific requirement of that crop, that process is known as curing. Now in this case, generally on a mass scale, when there is a production of your the pepper, then you are after ripening, you are harvesting it. Means you have to pile the fruits, okay, in a heap on a clean surface for browning. That means it is left in the open air for browning. Now, when that process is going on, berries start to separate from the spike because it's a vine. It is related to like it's connected with this portion of the spike and all. So what happens, like the process of detachment starts itself when the browning is going on. After it is simultaneously when browning is there, if you are leaving anything outside, it starts drying also, right? So now it comes to a stage where you can separate the berries, the partially dried berries or fully dried berries in certain cases, by rubbing them between hands or trampling under feet. That is also done. Now, blanching is done in many cases, for example, and like if, for example, browning is completed, then it is being detached from the spike, then blanching has been done. Okay, so that there can be a restriction of whatever biological process is going on, biological processes going on. Um, in that case, what happens is like basically I'm just assuming that the crowd here, everybody is familiar with blanching. Okay, so means that I hope K is. Means I'm thinking that blanching is a common concept which all of you know. So in that case, what we are subjecting it to sudden heat and then cooling it down, right? So that being said, that's why what happens, like whatever kind of enzymatic process or anything is going on, that will be restricted, right? So it's suddenly restricted and it stops. So that's the main objective here as well, because it is a berry, it's a fruit, right? So after blanching, it is dried. Many cases it is sun dried and many cases it is mechanically dried. If it is mass production, industrial scale, you would see that mechanical drying is adapted. But I have to point here out that in most of the cases, by experience, I'm saying the traditional methodologies through which they are made, which are adapted in a village or in a community, they are the best methods of processing, though time consuming. Okay, so whatever comes out of it, especially when we talk about spices, so sun drying probably is a better option in many cases. Now, quality determinants in case of this spice is correct stage of maturity and variety during which we are uh, harvesting it. Okay. Now, large scale blanching is also a part, like a process where it is adapted to fasten the browning. Okay, natural browning is there, it further fastens it. Now, mechanical drying, first drying through countercurrent mechanism. So you have to realize that in case of mechanical drying also, like it's not that the spice is completely dried using mechanical drying. Okay, so it is subjected to partial drying where the moisture content is decreased up to 25%. And then it is further kept in stage to reduce it to 10%. Now, uh, a decrease up to 25% is a faster process. But then again, it is kept for 24 hours to attain the 10%. Why is it done? For example, in general notion also, everybody knows higher temperature, faster drying, and however, what will happen if it is higher temperature? It will lead to deterioration of many volatile components because many of the components are are susceptible to higher temperature, right? That's why it is being done in stage. Now, after attaining 10%, which is like moisture content at which it is stored, then cleaning is done. Cleaning is done using winnowing, using blowers, and multiple sieve also come air classifier type of machine. Why? Because, for example, size separation can also happen when we are using sieve, and we can separate it from other debris as well, right? Then, um, in many cases, it is washed and dried again. If it is when we are talking about trampling with feet, right? It's a messy process. So, of course, it will be subjected to some kind of components which we don't want to be there. So, in that case, it can be washed and dried again. And grading in this case, black pepper is done based on size and density. Okay. So, packaging mostly, what are the objectives here? To maintain the moisture content and oxygen, like we have to control the amount of oxygen which is introduced to the spices so that aroma loss is minimum, right? And anything which is dry, we know that it is hygroscopic in nature, isn't it? So, as because it is a dry spice, we have to keep that in mind as well. And when there is mass production, like before getting it into retail or any kind of retail packaging, what happens? We have to store it like as such in the warehouses, right? And sudden rain with climate change, that has become a challenge. Like you cannot predict weather the way, and most of the cases you would see that they were done locally, right? So the processing portion is also dependent on local weather, which is a privilege as well as a curse, right? So, if it rains or anything, then molds and insect attack can be there. That has to be controlled as well. So, generally, bulk packaging, polyethylene lined double gunny bags are used for the pepper, and retail packaging, high density polyethylene pouches are used. Okay. Then, furthermore, if it is a ground pepper, then laminated heat sealable aluminum foil is used. And many cases, when it is in gunny bag or any other case, fumigation is often done to actually means help in preventing means any kind of contamination or anything. Now there are like we talked about pepper, and probably the first picture which I showed, that is the version of pepper which everybody knows, right? However, you would realize as soon as you travel and read mostly that there are different version of spices. Okay, it's not limited to what we know, powder and whole. So there is one version of pepper which is white pepper. So upper skin is removed in this case by soaking in water at the early stage, and then further drying and browning and all these processes. Not exactly that. Browning is not done in case of white because it is The upper skin is removed and then it is dried directly. Okay, so that's why the color is white. Now, dry green versions are also there. So in this case, it is the green berries which we saw, and then in those cases blanching is done and drying is done, and that's it. Okay, so depends, mostly it is blanching is done to prevent too much of browning, but there is a perfect stage of browning which is needed to be attained. So finishing stage probably is amalgamates with the blanching, right? Then green pepper in brine. So these are like fresh green peppers which are stored as pickles in brine. Okay, so the generally composition is citric acid 0.25%, brine 16%, and SO2 concentration is 100 ml in that. So SO2 mainly this is for storage, longevity. Now dehydrated version, direct dehydration means no further browning and then restricted by blanching or anything is done. Directly dehydrated versions are also there. Now, dried forms, we can separate it in different forms. So, dried forms include black pepper, white, dry green, and dehydrated. And wet forms include green pepper in brine, canned green peppers are also there, bottled green peppers are there, cured green peppers are there. So, this is like a bit of wet, but they do not have the liquid which is present, for example, in canned, bottled, or in the one green versions which are present in brine. Okay, so this is wet, but they are strained wet, means they are not soaked wet. Okay, so um yeah, I generally keep a video for watching how the processing is done, and probably students can watch this later if they are given the slides. Now, there are other forms which are there: frozen, freeze dried, decorticated, powdered pepper, and pepper oil. Now, pepper oil, when we are saying, or any kind of spice oil, you would realize that it is mainly the oleoresin portion which is extracted, and that is like we generally crush the spice, then distillation is done, which can be steam distillation, which leads to release of essential oil. Now, how we define oleoresin, and this is like a common description for all spices in which oleoresin means oleoresin composition obviously varies with spice to spice, but this is like the general description what it consists of and everything. So it is generally a dispersion of resin in essential oil. It consists of volatile part and non-volatile part. Okay, so the volatile component is your essential oil, which is responsible for aroma, and the non-volatile component is the pepperin. In this case, for example, in case of pepper, it's the pepperin. Probably many have felt that it's hot also. Let's not say spicy. Spicy is like a mix of many spices, but when we are studying this, then we can say that chili peppers are hot because they burn. It means there's a burning sensation in the mouth, right? So they're hot. So pepperine component is responsible mainly for that, and like oleoresin can be extracted using organic solvent. So pungency is another kind of description for the hotness or any peppers or anything. So we can say that pepperine is responsible for the pungency. Okay, and through hydrolysis, this can be further converted to piperidine and pipperic acid, which are the um, components of this pepperine. Combinedly makes the component. So, beneficial properties of black pepper, they include antioxidant properties. You can imagine that, okay, a lot of these antioxidant properties are associated with many different beneficial effects, right? Then anti-inflammatory activity, immunomodulatory effect. Then these are also effective for hypertension and type 2 diabetes, but this is quite a lot associated with antioxidant properties. Okay, now I will show you some of the tree spices, but can the moderator please let me know how much time is left?
I'm sorry, it's mute. You still have 30 minutes. Yeah.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So after introduction of the tree spices, I will take you to the slides where we have processing technologies,
Okay.
and I have a couple of spices. So if the time permits, we will have a detailed description about another spice. But otherwise, what are the different processing techniques which are being used right now? We will just get a brief of that. Okay. So basically, we saw in the start itself how the division or the categorization is done. Tree spices, from the picture itself, you can see many familiar spices, right? So like there are this is tamarind, and for example, this is clove, this is bay leaf, this is we call it kadi patta. Okay. So many of you know it with a different name actually, and all of a sudden it's not coming to me. But anyways, and this is cinnamon, and this is cassia. Why the point of keeping both these pictures is that there's a very huge difference between cinnamon and cassia. I don't know about Indonesia, but in India, a lot of spices are there which are basically, you can say, cassia, which are sold as a misconception of cinnamon. Okay. These are cassia is a bit thicker spice, and cinnamon like rolls are very thin and fragile. It's basically, you can say it's like an art how it is made, like from the bark and all. And uh, nutmeg is also there, and this is all spice. The interesting part about the spice is that it is actually a combination of many different spices. Like if you put this one, then you can have a combination of a lot of 3 4 spices are there, which contribute to the components are there in this spice, which actually contributes to the overall aromatic properties of this. Okay. So actually I had made quite a lot of slides about clove, and then basically overall, if I go, then it is bud part of the plant which is used for making spices in case of clove. And just let me just browse through so that you will know where to find what. And in this case also, you would realize that clove oil, that is quite important. There we were talking about oleoresin, it is a similar thing, but here in this case it is clove oil, which is a very popular product which is sold, and it has many um, medicinal properties. And then here you can see some of the beneficial properties. I have jotted down for individual spices, so you can look into that. And this is cinnamon. So here, like the lower portion of bark of the tree, they are taken off, and then this is further processed, dried and rolled and processed for getting cinnamon. Okay. And mostly you will see that to keep this rolls, it is tied once the bark is dried. Like they are dried in this form, and they are tied together so that the rolls are maintained. So mainly you can say that it is known as sweet wood also because of the aromatic property it has. Now everybody can go through just major points. I will, like, because of time constraint, I will browse through so that you know where to look what. So the forms which are present in case of cinnamon: quillings, okay, and then featherings and leaves. So you have um, quillings and featherings. Mostly this is the most high priced. Okay, quillings. Featherings are some of the broken pieces, and they are still fine. I mean, you can have high price for that, but the forms which we see mostly in the market are quillings, which are the most highest price product. For example, in case of tea also, you would realize that there are different varieties, right? And they fetch different prices. So in this case also, the same thing is there. And leaves, why this point is important, like mentioning that, okay, what's the point of having leaves? See, any kind of spice plant or tree, it's not like one part is predominant, probably predominant in terms of having the spice components, but other portions are also quite rich in other components, right? So it's like the whole tree which is rich in spice components. Okay, so being said that, it's like you can, if a plant's leaf is quite rich, you can take or have some other part, and still that will also have quite a lot of aromatic and flavor components, probably not that much used, but in the powder form, actually, a lot of other portions of the plant. Means, if we are saying cinnamon powder, it is basically a bark, but it might be mixed with the other components. It happens, not specifically in case of cinnamon, but there are spices in which different portions. Yes, one which we can say saffron. In case of saffron, actually, it happens. Highest price saffron is marvelous, but then the other portions of the flower can also be used as spices. Okay, so those portions are taken together, and saffron powder is made out of it. Okay, so that's there. Different prices will fetch you different qualities, but they are portion of the same spice tree or plant or anything. Now, okay, peeling, then okay, regularly you can go through this, and this also has a lot of beneficial properties. Now, this is cassia, and it looks quite similar, but you have to see that it is thicker. Okay, and this is basically known as false cinnamon also. So if we look at the differences what are there, like in case of cinnamon bark, it is smooth and thin. Cassia bark coarse and thick. It is tan in color, bark powder, cinnamon bark, and this is cassia bark is reddish brown. So if you have a very reddish brown, that you have to understand is cassia. But it gives the aromatic component, though it is a bit different. Relatively less intense aroma, means more intense aroma. And essential oil content is between 0.5 to 2%, and this, in this case, cassia bark, it is 1 to 4.5. Eugenol is the main constituent in leaf oil of cinnamon, and cinnamaldehyde is the main component in case of cassia. Flavor is good, and in case of cassia, it is not described as a delicate flavor. Okay, so this is another spice. Why it is interesting? Because see, as I told you, many portions of the same part is used as different spices. So in case of nutmeg and mace, one portion is nutmeg, and this is the portion which is the this part is, this is nutmeg, and this is the portion which is used as mace. So that is also a spice. Both are different spices. Okay. Now processing of that, you guys can look into it. So that's there. Now this is vanilla. This is very common, right? So these are the beans from which it is dried, and then the vanilla is the beets are extracted from it, and they're further used. Okay, so um okay, so probably you guys can look into this. Okay, some of the things which are associated, some of the points which are associated with the spice industry, and which I would like to emphasize, is that we saw in case of pepper, that it is susceptible to a lot of infestation. So mainly in case of spices, they are very prone to fungal infection. Okay, as compared to other things. So mycotoxins are the toxins which are released by through the during the fungal infection, and aflatoxin is the main component, categorization of the component, and ochratoxin is the secondary metabolite which is produced. Now, what are the different effects of these mycotoxins? Is like dysfunction syndromes, mainly of the digestive tract, then foodborne infections. Obviously, if it is a toxin which is in our food, we will have foodborne infections. Then there is carcinogenic effect also of these toxins when consumed in higher doses. And now, conditions which under which this occurs mainly is like temperature range between 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, moisture content above 16%, and corresponding water activity if it is more than 0.7. Okay. Now, it can also occur at lower temperature, but that is a rare occurrence, okay, as compared to the occurrence at 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. Now, there are different ways of describing the toxin concentration, microbial concentration. Okay, generally, what is followed is is the description according to International Commission on Microbiological Specifications. Okay, so if it is a bacterial count, aerobic mesophilic bacterial count, that when it is
Yes.
more than
Ngomong sejak
106
ngomong
CFU
itu
per gram,
ada
then
teko
that is a problem.
nomen
And
tepung
in case of
tahu
fungal count,
rampung ya.
if it is more than 104 CFU per gram, then that is unfit for food applications. Okay. Now, generally, of course, it's because of the improper practices that we get this infestation, right? Mostly the challenges which are still faced in the spice industry, conventional methods of heaping, for example, as we saw in case of pepper, when it is used, of course, it is subject to all kind of climatic and environmental conditions, right? Then poorly maintained on-farm or in-house conditions. That is a challenge. Then often sun drying is done on the ground, and its spices are sold without being decontaminated. Okay. For example, a blanching or fumigation, if it is not being used, then obviously that is going to lead to, or proper drying for that matter. If it hasn't been followed, then it will lead to several different infestations. Now, at retail market level, it's basically because of the cross contamination it happens. Like something is infested and something else gets affected by that, whether it is a physical, biological, or any chemical hazard, but that happens through cross contamination. And mostly, even if it's not because of the direct infestation, it's because of the excreta of the birds, rodents, and insects which roam around. Okay. So basically, we have to maintain hygiene, especially if it is in the case of food. Then, to prevent any kind of illness or anything, we have to maintain a certain amount of hygiene. Now, what are the contributing factors? This is like a summary of that, and we can see that there are abiotic and biotic factors, right? So, biotic factors obviously different kind of microorganisms, animals, small animals, big animals, everything, right? And in case of abiotic factors, you would see mainly it is the moisture content, means humidity, sunlight exposure or heat exposure, and gases which are introduced to the spices. They are the major factors. It doesn't matter whether pre-harvest, harvest, or post-harvest. Along with that, of course, if it is mechanical harvesting or anything is adapted, then mechanical damage is also an abiotic factor which is contributing to the infestation and loss of spices. Okay, so that's there. Now, some of the advanced techniques which are being used for the processing of spices, in case of drying, microwave drying is adapted at many places. It's still in the stage of, you can say, investigation, but microwave drying and then a refractive window drying, which is recently used by some of our, like I'm not an expert of that, but I have seen other people using those for spice preservation, and that is being quite effective. Now, gamma radiation, that is used for sterilization in many cases, dose of 10 kilograms, has been found to be effective in destroying these microbes and pre-packed spices. And like mold infestation or contamination can be removed at the dose of 5 kilogram. That is enough. Okay. Hydrostatic high pressure different pressure cycles and time we can apply, and that can lead to decontamination through pressurization that is there, and like techniques such as cold plasma. Okay, that is also being used for the spices are being subjected to cold plasma, and some ionizing radiation also to sterilize. Okay, so you can see that you will realize, even for example here I'm saying microwave drying, but mechanical drying processes, different mechanical drying processes are being used, which are used in other cases. But the major problem here is that as soon as you use mechanical drying, temperature sensitive volatile components are lost. Okay, so that's a challenge. Microwave actually reduces the time of exposure, so that's why probably it is a good thing. But then again, you have to fix how much. The process has to be optimized. As I said, other drying methods which are being used, some of the ones which are very expensive spices, freeze drying is used. Then, of course, other enhanced drying methods which definitely reduces the drying time are like infrared assisted drying, then ultrasound assisted drying. These are reducing the time significantly. Of course, hot air drying is the most common method. These are some of the modified methods, right? Now, grinding technique, as because we mentioned also that there are different forms of spices, right? So grinding is also an important process because ground powders are produced through that. So in this case, uh, mainly you can see that chilled method, like lower temperature grinding. Okay, so in this case insulated coolers are there, and then they are you cool those spices and you are immediately grinding it. The principle is that. So what happens at lower temperature, there's a less chance of loss of the volatile components. That's why. Now cryogenic grinding, in this case, like the spices are subjected to nitrogen and then they are ground. Okay, so actually in this case it is very helpful to maintain the concentration of components. So because it is low temperature, right? So oleoresin component can be maintained uniformly throughout the batches if it is adapted. Now, in this case, how it happens is like raw material is being put into the screw conveyor. Now, in this screw conveyor itself, we are providing liquid nitrogen. So, it is already in a frozen state. So, when it is breaking, it is being converted to smaller sizes. Okay, this is two stages in which cryogenic grinding is happening. So, it is cutting and reducing the size, and then it is again getting it into another chamber where again liquid nitrogen concentration is being maintained, and this is your grinding wheel which is actually reducing the particle size further. Okay, now the benefit here is that nitrogen can be again recycled, right? It can go again and then liquidified and then again subjected to this process, like used in this process. Now mostly, what are the different mills which are used during cryogenic milling? Ball mill is very common. In this case, small steel balls are there which are rolling inside when the mill is being turned. Okay, means there is a rotary motion here, right? For any kind of grinding, there is a rotary motion, right? There is cutting and reduction of size. So that's there. Now, this one is a picture of fine impact mill. So you can see many spikes here. Okay. In our general grinder, what, 2 to 3 spikes are there, 2 to 3 cutting knives are there inside the grinder. Now, this one has a lot of those. So that increases the efficiency. Now, you can have hammer mill also, which are continuously hammering and making the powder. Okay. So these are mainly the three types of mills which are used for cryogenic milling. Now, why cryogenic milling is better in all aspects? Like you can see, if the energy requirement, grinding output, grinding of soft material, it is possible. Then sieve clogging, no clogging is there in case of traditional grinding. It is why it is there because higher temperature leads to condensation of water also, right? For example, why we are keeping after drying in desiccator everything or all the samples, because to normalize the moisture content concentration. It becomes hot when it is traditional grinding, right? So that leads to deposition of water also once the grinding process is complete. So that's a challenge as well. So in this case, that's why leads to sieve clogging, because you have lumps, right? But here no such kind of thing is there, so no clogging is there. Motor capacity lower, fire risk is not there. Then color of the ground powder, it is as good as the original one. Loss of essential oil minimum, total oil minimum. Composition of essential and total oil, it is as similar to the seeds or leaves or whatever is being ground, right? And the retention of medicinally important components, more retention is there, of course, because it is low temperature, right? Control on particle size has been found to be effective in case of cryogenic grinding. And air pollution, microbial load, there's no air pollution in this case. And microbial load, as because it is a low temperature grinding under cryogenic condition, it doesn't exist as anything which actually survives that. Now, distillation, as we realized, is an important process for separation of any kind of oil, whether it is clove oil or it is vanilla oil or it is oleoresin in other cases. So in those cases, what happens is that there are two processes. One is water distillation and the other one is steam distillation. Okay. So in case of water distillation, you would realize that they are mainly inside the water and they are being boiled. Okay. Huh? And then there is condensation here, and your this is your condensation apparatus, and there again you have essential oil which probably can go out, or you have water with essential oil from which you are further separating it. Okay. Now in case of steam distillation, what happens, you are subjecting the herbs and spices to steam. This one, water distillation, steam distillation. Steam has higher temperature. Okay, so in that case, it probably has higher impact, like damaging impact on the spice oils as well. However, in many cases, this is also advisable. Okay, steam distillation, this one. So now here, essential oil is on the top and water is at the bottom. Okay, so this is also a mix from which again you are separating the essential oil. Now, you have sock slit extraction also. So in this case, probably if anybody has done any kind of fat extraction, then they will know this is your thimble. And in that case, you have the sample here. This is your solvent, which is getting heated, getting evaporated, and then condensing, getting into the thimble. Okay, so mainly what? Solvent is being heated, it goes up, it goes to the condenser, it gets down after condensing, and here it falls into the thimble which contains the sample, and from there itself it is again the sample. Thimble is actually porous, right? So all the liquid all the essential oil, all the component which are soluble in the solvent, they are dripping off from this thimble into the distillation flask again. So ultimately what happens in this one, this your sample is in the distillation flask once you stop the sock slit extraction process. So everything is there, and generally we take volatile solvents which have different means they are condensing and they are evaporating at a different temperature. So in those cases, you can actually separate them easily. Hexane is quite often used, but hexane is not advisable. Ethanol is a better option as well. So now, these are some of the facts about steam and hydrosteam distillation. Now, some of the other extraction techniques which are being used, microwave. Okay, so this is effective because anybody who is familiar with the principle of microwave will say that with polar solvents it is very effective. Okay, in case you have a non-polar solvent in which the essential oils get solubilized. You can actually combine it with the polar solvent and then opt for microwave extraction. So in that case, there will be a heating because of the polar solvent component, as well as there will be an extraction because of the non-polar solvent part. Okay. Now, apart from that, cold pressing is also done. Ultrasound assisted extraction is done. The supercritical fluid extraction is done. But this one is a bit too expensive if we say for the commercialization, right? Now, again, depending on the budget and accessibility, you can have a combination or a cascade extraction. Combination is like simultaneously you are combining two or three techniques. Simultaneously it is being subjected to hot water, ultrasound, then it is a combination. Cascade extraction is the one where one technique is being applied after the other. For example, first we are subjecting it to ultrasound, then we are extracting it using microwave assisted extraction. So then it will be called cascade extraction. In that case, we are doing stepwise application of different techniques. So this is an apparatus which shows you the microwave extraction. And again, in case of ultrasound extraction, you can have an ultrasonic bath in which you have sample plus solvent inside the bath, which is surrounded with water mainly because ultrasonic bath contains water. So now you can apply heat here as well as ultrasound and sample plus solvent. You are getting it digested here and then you can separate it. Now the other one is the probe method for ultrasonic extraction. So that in that case also you can insert the probe inside and subject it to ultrasound and get the mm, digestion done. Right. So now counter current SFE, which is used in many cases, but I would highly advise that this is quite expensive. Okay, but in this case what happens, you can have stepwise separation, sample 1 and then again sample 2, sample 3. So while you have separating the portions of the essential oil, you can have different samples and in the end you have a residue. Okay, so which is not useful for you. So that liberty is there in case of counter current SFE and it's quite useful for sure. But yeah, common methods are more common. Means they are common, said to be common for a reason because they are easily adapted. So encapsulation techniques are also there. Spray drying is used, melt extrusion technology is used, freeze drying is used, which is followed by generally grinding. So in this case, what you need an encapsulation material in which the essential oils are infused, combined, and then they are stabilized using drying with grinding so that you have a fine powder, right? Then this ultrasound assisted microencapsulation is also there. Ultrasound actually increases the efficiency of encapsulation because like uniform particle size will be there and then the bonding is there, so it is much more how to say uniform we can say. And then ultrasound assisted spray drying. So ultrasound is first like probably the sample is subjected to ultrasound and then spray drying is done. Or in many cases, ultrasonic nozzle is also being used. Okay, so that is also there. Now, The challenge here is that in case of essential oils, the components of spices, is that they are highly volatile and they have many cases they have low thermal stability. So you have to think in that way, right? Now, this is an example of melt extrusion process. This is quite a lot used in case of plastics, but it is quite a useful technique which can be used for um, pelletization of if we are making anything with spice extract pellets. These are very useful. Now, for example, you have an encapsulating material and you have the component, and then they are mixed. Okay, so here you are melting also the components. Okay, means you're fluidizing it basically. Then there is a portion where they are both mixed together. Okay, infused into each other. Now there is your homogenization, and ultimately it is cooled. Okay, because see, at these two processes, melting is a high temperature process. Means basically what we are suppose we are making a custard. What we are doing? We are mixing everything when it is heated. We are serving it cool for sure, but we are making everything when it is heated so that it can mix well, right? So that's the principle here as well. Now you are mixing together, and then here it is homogenized, and you are discharging it where it is cooled down, and now they are mixed together, so they are infused into each other, and they can be sold as different piece like shapes and sizes. Pelletization is one of the options. Okay. So that's it. I think, do we have more time to discuss any more spices
Yes.
or uh,
I think uh after 30 minutes more is for the discussion time. 30
okay,
minutes.
so I have 30 more minutes.
Oh no, I mean 30 more minutes for our Q&A session.
Okay. So are we open to Q&A right now, or means should I close my presentation, or can I continue with discussing one more spice, or
Maybe you can close your presentation. I'm sorry.
oh, okay. No problem. No problem. Yes, that's why I asked. Yeah, okay. So I think we are open for Q&A now. Oh,
Okay.
I can stop sharing. Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Okay.
I will bridging first. So thank you so much, Prof. Winnie, for the insightful presentation. So we now know about the examining spices from a functional food perspective that may begin by analyzing how the spices is um, processes and incorporated maybe into someone's diet or perfume or beverage, as Prof. Winnie said before, as a part of the cultures. So I'm sure that Prof. Winnie's presentation that will provoke that discussions from all the participants. So now I start our discussion. So we will discuss the session with several questions. Then we have approximately 30 minutes for the Q&A session. So please, maybe you can raise your hand, then you can directly ask to Prof. Winnie by turning on your audio or video, or maybe you can write down your questions in the Q&A room, and then please mention your name, affiliation, and questions. Is there any questions from all the participants? I hope that we can have an active sessions because I believe most of us are familiar with the topic because we consume a lot of spices in our daily life, in our food and everything. And I believe that we also have variety, diversities of our local indigenous spices in our different countries. Is there any questions? I saw here many different participants from Thai and Cambodians. So I can say that Thai people cannot live without spices because every day we eat delicious food using a lot of type of spices. I also saw the participants from students here who often use coriander and cumin, maybe from the Yemen.
Yeah, probably it was quite
Yeah.
theoretical, isn't it?
From the
But
Yemen,
you
we
can
know.
ask me about anything, because
Okay.
I'm a food engineer. If you want to ask, not
Yeah.
ask about spices,
Nice.
and you want to ask about something else, then also we can discuss. No worries
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. Maybe from Yemen to share about what is Hawaii as a traditional mixed spices. I heard a lot of Hawaii. Okay. Still no questions. Maybe I will ask one
Hi.
questions. Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
Hi, a very good tea. Thank you,
Okay.
Prof. Winnie and Doctor, for the sharing regarding
Sure.
the spices. So I'm Tajuddin from Malaysia. So
Uh,
basically, we consume a lot of spices from the India, as we have
mm,
the Mama restaurant because it's one of the good good
Okay.
restaurant to eat as well. Okay, so my question is, as the spice production or spice processing, the important thing is the drying method. All right.
Uh-huh.
So during
Yes,
the
yes.
drying method, is there any possibility of that spices to become less flavor or less in color or something like that? And if so, is there any additive that you add to make sure that the spices become more flavorless?
like additive
Um,
fortifications.
Yeah, yes, correct.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Winnie.
mm, Generally, actually, okay, first two parts, right? Yes, means as a matter of fact, if it is drying, you would realize that obviously there is a temperature effect. Okay, and a lot of like color components, they are either flavonoids, means flavonoids, that is the phenolic category, or means essential oil obviously is that leading to the flavor part, but color is mainly related to flavonoids, or they are the other category is your as one thing which is okay, let me just put it in this way, that whatever component is there, everything is heat sensitive in case of food. Okay, so of course the color is affected for sure. So whether it is a carotenoid component or if it is a flavonoid component, everything is heat susceptible, so we definitely have an effect over that. But the fact which you said, that fortification, generally in case of spices, it is not done. For example, what is done? One example I would say, in case of turmeric, when turmeric is it's a root, right? So a rhizome. So then once it is dried, then during drying process itself, it is actually coated with turmeric powder. Okay, or it is sprayed with turmeric water. Turmeric water, when I'm saying turmeric powder mixed in water, which is sprayed over it and it is dried to retain the color. Okay, and then again, for example, chilies when they are being processed, there are couple of chilies which are not hot, but they are added because of their color. Okay, and there are some other chilies which are added because they are very hot. Okay, so mainly when we are having a powder also, in that we can make it a mix of different kind of chilies as well. Or you would realize in the market itself, there are products which are not hot, means I'm talking about chili, but they have quite significant colors. Okay, then for example, spices mainly what they are added for color and flavor. Okay, so turmeric, then your saffron. These two are and these are some of the ones, and chilies. These are mainly for the color. Okay, and in this case, you can add more spices to get a better color, which will definitely have an impact on flavor as well. But in case of spices, any other fortification is generally not done. Okay, so that would be my answer. These are few examples which are done for maintaining the color, but yeah, other than that, there is no other fortification for maintaining this.
Okay.
Okay, okay, thank you for understanding. Okay.
Uh,
Is there more questions, Mr. Tajudin? Okay, maybe I will continue. So, uh, by speaking the drying process, so what's the minimum actually moisture content in the last process of drying, Prof. Winnie, actually? Common
Generally, in case of spices, I would say 10% is maintained. 10%.
10%.
10%. Yeah. 10%. Why I'm saying in the whole spices 10%, you might realize that we are powdering after it, right? If
Okay.
it is, for example, very dry, then we have
Mm,
challenges in that stage as well. Okay,
okay.
so it has to be optimum. But yes, 10% is the maximum up to we can go, but we cannot go higher because it will lead to infestation. So
I see.
most probably what range I have seen, 8 to 10% across the spices.
So after we got the 8 to 10%, is it possible that the products could be dehydrated after the storage or something? You mentioned about
Generally,
infestation.
yeah, means it's not dehydrated. It's
I
basically you absorb water
abs.
because, yeah, right, from the
Mm,
atmosphere. Because it's in the case of grains also, the same thing happens, isn't it? When rice or anything which is kept for a longer period of time. That's why rice is used as desiccator, isn't it? If
oh,
you will see many a times it is advertised that if a mobile phone is not working or soaked in water, it can be put in rice. Rice is a desiccator. So
okay.
that's why, because rice has very low moisture content, it will absorb water easily. That's why. And whenever there is a dry thing with increase in humidity, especially in case of spices, it will start absorbing water. And
Mm,
one more thing with spices is that spices are generally having smaller particle size, right? So
mm,
it's not very huge generally. So there is a very big surface area which is exposed, which can absorb water. So yeah.
okay. Is there any questions from another participants? No. Okay. Maybe I will ask. Actually, during my master's thesis last time, I worked on the profiling the oleoresins of nutmeg and maize. So I use the nutmeg and maize from Banda Island, Prof. Winnie. So last
Mm-hmm.
time I just take from Banda Islands the materials. So the farmers is using traditionals, using sun drying and also smoke. But
Yes,
so
yes.
actually last time I'm not sure why they use the smoke because during my profiling the smoke process is could change the profile of the oleoresins from the nutmeg and maize.
Yeah, because of the effect of heat, isn't it? Means
Oh,
heat changes, isn't it? Means that's why, like, often one more thing, we do it, we do not realize. Whenever we are making spice powder, it is sauteed.
I
Okay,
see.
we don't get it from the market and powder it directly. We saute it. Two reasons are there. One is that it becomes a bit dry when, like, it's a pan drying process, isn't it?
I,
If
mm,
it's
mm, mm,
generally an open vessel in which we are sauteing it,
mm.
right, on
Yeah.
heat. So it is drying. At the same time, we are subjecting it to heat as well. So there is a conversion. Okay. So there are dual reasons behind this. Like there's a conversion of component, and many a times in case of food, we might realize that we can consume a certain version of any kind of nutrient. Same
Mm,
goes with spices as well, right? So for absorbing any kind of nutrition, it has to be in that form. Spices as well, if when they're subjected to heat, then there is a conversion of component which leads to the effect. For example, in case of hydrolysis of pepperine, we
mm,
have pepperic acid and the other component, right? Piperidine. So when it is on its own, then it has a different kind of effect. Either it is enhancing or it is decreasing.
Oh, so we have another questions from participants in the Q&A box. So
Okay.
from Kui Kongmeng. So what is the
Hmm.
best advanced processing technique which can use to preserve a high quantity of volatile compounds as good as possible for the spices? Oh,
Yeah.
processing. All of this.
Yes, processing. Uh, actually, see, that's why I mentioned cryogenic grinding. Okay.
Hygienic.
Uh, now, what happens? Like this is a very good question, and probably when we are going into the processing part, when we are suggesting somebody, the major challenge first, which comes even before any kind of resources or anything,
Mm.
what is the monetary availability, how much money the person or the farmer can spend, or the organization can spend, or the industry can spend. Okay, when we are talking about advanced processing technique, none of this is cheap. Okay, so
Mm.
if and that's why probably in the market itself we will see that spices are having like low prices as well, high prices as well. And by default, the ones generally with the high prices, like you will rarely get a product which is high priced and not of good quality. The price is there because of the processing techniques which they are using. Among advanced processing techniques, I would say for the highest preservation of volatile components, you have anything which is low temperature. So cryogenic grinding, that is a very useful thing which is being used, and you will see in the labels also that cryogenic grinding has been used because it leads to the best quality of spice, right? So if somebody wants to sell the best quality price, and they can go to a market where people are willing to pay the price for the high volatile like sorry means the high quality, that is in terms of your aroma, your color, and your medicinal properties, then it makes it viable. It's like coffee or
Mm.
chocolate,
Mm.
right? The people who are buying it, they want to spend money on these things, that's why they are buying it. So we can target those kind of markets, and we can go for advanced processing, and among them I would say low temperature processing is the best one. So cryogenic grinding probably is the best.
Was quite interesting. So in India already like applied the claim like cryogenic on the label or something, Prof. Winnie?
Cryogenic in certain cases, yes. But
Ah,
one more thing you will see that a lot of spices, like this is part of the defense mechanism of plants.
oh,
Under extreme temperatures, they start accumulating secondary
mm,
metabolites, which
lights.
are part of their defense system. Okay, so tea, for example, it is high in phenolic components. So many advanced, so no, sorry, so many beneficial properties are associated with it. But that particular concentration of phenolic compounds, the composition of phenolic compounds, that is acquired because of the extreme atmospheric condition to which the tea plant is subjected. High
Mm,
altitude, which leads to thinner ozone layer, and low temperature. So that is the extreme condition. Same happens with means spices also. They are generally available in under, some of them are available under humid conditions. Some are growing quite a lot in high hilly areas, and you will see that then on high altitudes what happens again, the atmospheric conditions are lower. High altitude are generally with lower temperature also, right? So that leads to higher accumulation of the means components. Then what happens, suppose we are losing a certain portion during processing, that doesn't make major difference, because you have a threshold level which is good enough to fetch the fetch money in the market, as well as beneficial enough for people, so they're buying. So as such, in the means the spice trees or plants or anything, there is a higher concentration from which if a minor loss is there, then it's not going to affect the product.
Thank you, Prof. Winnie. So for the next questions is also from the Q&A session, anonymous participants. How to ensure products quality produce such as safety from contaminations according to the standards during the production process, huh? With 3D printing to prevent product failure. Who is the
Product
person?
filler
Yes,
means this is for encapsulation they are saying, or what they are saying?
I'm not
Production
sure.
also, and 3D printing. 3D printing is later on, right? And
Yeah,
production is on
3D
the
print.
ground.
Yes, that's why. But
Okay,
anonymous.
one of the things which I would say, in case if somebody, for example, is using 3D printing for
3D
any
print.
kind of encapsulation
Mm,
or making product which has spices, you have to keep in mind that mostly in case of food industry, steel parts are used. Okay, so when it is 3D printer, then in that case also parts have to be of that kind of quality which can be easily washed, like the dispenser and whatever is being used. And then again, if you want to have like 3D printing, okay, if you are trying to have contamination free, then probably some of you are, or most of you, or all of you are familiar with rooms which are microbiology labs, right? So there is a vacuum system, like air vac system, which is maintaining the um, how to say, low microbial count in the, or contamination in the processing facility. So if 3D printing is being used commercially for producing anything, it has to be done under certain environment to maintain the decontamination as well. Along with, the parts have to be metallic which can be washed easily.
I see.
Mainly steel, yeah, mainly steel, yeah.
So we have another questions from Komang Putra. Do you want to directly ask to Prof. Winnie, Mr. Komang? So for the information, Prof. Winnie, I thought that Mr. Komang is from the Celebes Islands, one of
Okay.
the producer of nutmeg in Indonesia.
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's actually nice because we teach about it, but I've never encountered anybody who's
Yes,
producing nutmeg. So he has some real experience. Probably he can correct me in certain things which are not based on experience. Yeah.
Mr. Komang, you want to ask?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity and good 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 noon, Doctor. Thank you for your lecture. Good material. I have a question. Actually, I have a background as a small farmer. My parents and my family as a farmer too. We do
Mm-hmm.
some of vanilla, but in small scale. Especially my
Okay.
neighbor. Since
Mm-hmm.
my father was we not plan any vanilla again.
Okay.
And I have relate with the I mean post harvest technology about these spices. Maybe this vanilla belong the spices. Commonly in traditional and household level in my village rural area,
Mm-hmm.
we sunshine to help control the moisture. I mean
Yeah.
to help
Okay.
without using advanced technology as you presented before, because that is quite expensive and not accessible for small villagers, small farmer like us. But
Mm-hmm.
the problem, since Indonesia have two seasons, dry season and rainy
Rainy.
season,
Mm-hmm.
especially in July in
Mm,
my terrain, that is usually have a high intensity of rain. So
Mm-hmm.
the um, uh, sunshines in maybe in the day is not any
Mm.
longer, maybe just 2 or 3 hour, because my place
Mm-hmm.
in 1050 meter above sea level.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that is
Okay,
problem.
okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Suggestion to me to deal with that
Mm-hmm.
problem. What we want to control the moisture of
Content.
the moisture content of the vanilla during the rainy season.
Season.
That is that's the point. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
I thought
Because
you
my
want to.
So the moisture
And
content maintenance in the facility you are saying, or while drying you are saying?
the facility, I mean the facility for to control that.
Facility. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is a challenge for sure. Then actually, what you means, I just don't see anything which is a cheaper choice for sure, because means maintaining lower moisture content in a facility is that you have to pump out moisture out of there, right? Basically, that's what you are asking, that you want to get the moisture out of the facility. And facility, I'm assuming that it would be a room or something like that, right?
storage or room drying, Mr. Komal?
uh,
Um, if the store, I mean the storage is not, maybe, yeah, the storage too affecting.
Mm.
I mean
mhm.
the process while moisturizing control. I mean, yeah, that is.
Oh, you're talking about drying process probably. Okay, couple of things.
The
If you are
problem.
talking about the facility, then like it has to be a closed facility in which you are maintaining. Closed
Mm.
facility. So in that case, you might be able to maintain the moisture and humidity. Okay.
Mm.
Sorry, humidity and temperature at the same time. Okay, so that is not a cheap process at all. I mean, I wouldn't say. If it is about drying, then I can say that you can go for vacuum drying, which is
Vacuum.
a bit of faster process. Okay, and it will be lower temperature application as well. Okay, not hot air, because hot air drying, what happens, it depends on the atmospheric, means there's a lot of fluctuation there, like to maintain the humidity, right? In case of hot air drying, but vacuum drying might be something which is which will fetch, means it will not be very expensive, and at the same time it will serve the purpose also, if it is for drying. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Winnie. Is it enough, Prof. Komal?
I
Mr.
hope it was
Komal?
helpful, but then again, I mean, unless until he tries and looks into it, like nothing can be guaranteed that it will work out. I mean,
Uh,
they will have to probably see it for really if it is working. But generally, vacuum drying is means not as expensive as other drying
yes.
processes.
Yeah.
So we do suggest it in many cases, and people are doing vacuum drying in many
Mm.
cases. So that's why I thought probably that might work for you. On a smaller scale, you can try it in any facility if it is available, vacuum drying. And of course, moisture is a very big issue. I mean, to
Mm.
maintain it in a facility, this is something probably people don't realize. If it is a cold country, they have heaters inside the room, right?
Yeah.
So when they have heating inside the room, automatically it
Increase
is a
relatively.
dry atmosphere, right?
Mm.
And if you are using AC at the same time, if it is a AC
Mm.
controlled room, in that case also there is dry atmosphere maintained. So that becomes challenge on a smaller scale. But I would say that if you have a facility where you can it can be a compact room, it doesn't have to be a very big room, but if you can maintain the temperature there, means a compact room I'm saying, because if it is a smaller room, it would be easier to control the humidity level in there as well. Like, if for example growing in a greenhouse or something, what we are increasing the humidity level or moderating it, the same mechanism can be applied in this case as well. where we are trying to decrease the moisture content, basically.
Okay. Thank you so much for Mr. Komang for the questions. I think that we have last 4 minutes. Is there any other questions from another participants? No? Okay, maybe I will ask the last questions, Prof. Winnie. Oh,
Okay.
last time you talk about the COVID-19, so related the post-COVID-19, Prof. Winnie, we know that even though there might be some shift as we came out finally, thankfully, from the post-COVID-19, from pandemic to endemic, so how the trends of the spices market and demand will be expected, especially in maybe tree spices or seed spices or other new world spices that will be demand push the category higher or something?
I see that spices market will be increasing.
Ah,
Yeah, because because this is something to stay. I mean, there are so many benefits which are not limited
mm,
to only the flavor and color of spices, but they are associated with beneficial properties. And when we are talking about beneficial property or nutritive quality of a bread, and
mm,
then you can imagine, which is a common food, right?
yeah,
And when the focus is shifting towards spices, that's like expensive and people are still buying, and spices are diversifying into many things. Like when we are talking about nature based any spray,
mm,
any antimicrobial spray, that will be based on spices, right?
yes,
And if it is any other product, for example, if it is a beauty product, then also it will be based on
yeah,
spices,
spices.
because this is the natural source of many antimicrobial components, and it has its nutritive beneficial properties, means health beneficial properties, but at the same time it has many beneficial properties which can be applied in all other cases. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, Prof. Winnie, to answer all the questions from the participants due to the limited time. So please accept our apologies if your questions has not been submitted to Prof. Winnie, or maybe if you want to further ask to Prof. Winnie, you can additional questions to Prof. Winnie by Q&A feature in the Google Forms or on the eLog platform for the sessions, and we will help convey the question to Prof. Winnie. So I'm happy to have a great speaker and also great participant in the sessions. So I believe that all of us all learn a lot from Prof. Winnie's lectures. So maybe for the last, I will sum up a little bit about the discussion today. So no single post-harvest processing, for example, drying technique is justifiable to be used for all the types of products because we know that the characteristic of the and the properties of various spices is very different, such as moisture content, bulk densities, hygroscopicity, or something especially for the bioactive compounds. So to understand and the governing mechanism of processing for a particular group of major species is very important in designing and adapting relevant post-harvest technologies or maybe food processing and various novel technologies that Prof. Vinis already explained before. So I believe that we can summarize all we think after these sessions, and maybe to ignite the last session, there is one question we need to reflect. So what can be done to preserve and promote the product innovations of spices? That perhaps it will be involved the new post-harvest technologies that might be improve our local indigenous spices quality and product diversities. If it's possible, why can we try? So finally, we came to the last, at the end of the second session. So behalf of the committee, maybe I would like to give Prof. Winnie a symbolic certificate of the appreciations for the fifth summer course from our Dean, Prof. Maya. Maybe the operators could share the certificate. So on behalf of
Thank you
Prof.
very much. Can I get a copy of this one to share?
Sure, sure. We can send it after this
Yeah,
session.
yeah.
Winnie.
And unfortunately, my video is not starting, so I'm
Okay.
really sorry. But this is my recent picture. So if you see me on the road, I will be looking like this. So you can
Okay.
definitely, if you ever bump in, And
Okay.
you're more than welcome to ask me questions. To all the participants, thank you very much.
Thank you. Please give a big round of virtual applause to Prof. Winnie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for
So
this
thank you so much
opportunity.
for Prof. Winnie for all the energy of this session. So I hope this session will energize all the participant enthusiasm to recharge the second day sessions. So lastly, I will remind that all session handouts, related materials, and other resources can be found on the ELOC platform. And also all the participants of the each assignment and also the materials can be found in the ELOC platform and also the terms of reference. So you might check out the ELOC platform and also join to the our Instagram account at Summer Course FTP UGM. Maybe you can share some posts while participating with some hashtags. So lastly, please fill out the attendance form based on the speaker sections in the chat box that already shared by the committee. So lastly, I give back the session to the Master of Ceremony.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Ariana Esmeralda and Mrs. Winnie Routray. Now before we ending the session, let's take a photo together. Okay, so let's open your cam if you're not have to. Please turn on your camera if there are no problem with your device or signal, and
My camera is not switching on, so I'm really sorry for that.
It's
Or
okay,
is
Dr.
it?
Winnie. It's okay.
it's okay.
We're still happy to see your name on the screen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.